Hello, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast for Australia brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. First of all, it's really good to be back with all of you. I was gone for about 3 months. I had thought about pursuing just some other interests, and I'll be honest with you, as soon as I left, I missed it. I just want to thank several people, including Jeff Tarsi and Rob Clayton, for just opening the door for me to come back. And I'm back, and I'm excited for it, and we're going to start these updates again for you on the regular. So here we go. I've got a lot I want to talk with you about because it's been 3 months, and I think we should just kind of dig into this and see what your midsummer time frame did and compare it to how well the models forecasted. Because I'm about to show you at the very end the newest seasonal forecast that takes you all the way through your autumn, maybe a little bit into the start of winter. And we got to talk about El Nino. We've got to talk about some recent precipitation holes as well. So this is a map that's kind of been bothering me. I usually like this map. It's the Northern Australia Climate Program's drought monitor. This goes for the last 3 months ending in February. And the reason why I'm looking at this map so carefully is because I've heard from many of you talking about basically that you're very, very dry in key growing areas. So I want to do a little comparison with some other things here to kind of assess what our water situation looks like. The first is going to be the December, January, and February precipitation anomalies that come from BOM. And what's interesting about this is these areas that have been drier, I'm just pointing out a few of these, they've been exceptionally dry compared to average over that time frame. And we've had such very wet conditions at time, mainly due to tropical events that have come into kind of these corners of Western Australia and parts of Queensland. There's been some bigger storms that are down here toward the higher elevation, down farther to the south as well. But it's just interesting to see the difference between the drought monitor map a moment ago and this one. So I was also curious, before I look at a couple of other maps that kind of clue me in on how things have been over the last 3 months, I was curious how well this was predicted. So if this was the summertime, precipitation pattern, so December, January, February, I want to remind you of this. The best forecasting model that's out there for the sub-seasonal to seasonal is the European model. That's why I show it to you all the time. But it does have its limitations. And this is what it predicted. I mean, if you notice, there's actually not a spot that it predicted for this past December, January, February timeframe that was not expected to be normal or above normal in precipitation. So you go back and look at the verification, and you can see very large areas that were missed by the model, and we just need to take that into consideration because I'm about to show you the newest updates of that forecast model. So thinking this through, I wanted to pull up another couple of data sets. This one, I'm so thankful this is up and working again. There was a while there that we just didn't have it. But apparently the Australian water outlook maps, which are showing us root zone soil moisture, are back and functioning. And now I begin to see some of these drier pockets that you can see in through here. And of course down here across South Australia, along the coast, getting into New South Wales and Victoria, and even pockets here along the East Coast. So again, just trying to gain some knowledge on where we've been before I show you where we're going. I also want to show you this. This, of course, is available on the website I built for all of you that is still active and running. I'll show you where to go get this in a few moments. But this is your volumetric soil moisture for early here in the morning on Thursday, March the 6th. So in other words, these forecast models can't produce accurate forecasts of precipitation or temperature if they've got the soil moisture wrong. And so just looking down at the top soil moisture, I start to see much larger areas that are in deficit. And if you just look back over the last month, here you go, this would have been February's anomalies. So again, we're starting to see several areas that, because of some tropical activity, have been extremely wet. But just take a look at the coast here. Very dry, pockets of the interior dry, and then here in the north quite dry as well. Okay, all of that is kind of just me recapping where we've been so that I can get myself back oriented with your weather. And I just want to show you what's going on right now. The sun, of course, just rose a little while ago as I was starting this recording, and we get a good glimpse at Alfred here. And I want to show you a neat animation of this. This is from the Himawari 8 satellite, but I want to take you over to my Twitter feed, and I want to show you an animation put out there by Sierra. Now, this is a group in the United States, but they control all of our satellites and have access to all of them as well. And so I'm just going to go ahead and blow this up, and I want to play this animation for you. There's the end of it. Let's let it start over again. So Alfred's been hanging off the shore for quite some time now. It's had a very deep convective ring on its southern side primarily, not so much on the northern side. And you can see that right in through here, that big push that you see, and watch it again right there. And what we're curious about is as this does approach land, coming towards some very large, city centers like Brisbane and getting toward the Gold Coast, Byron Bay. And then, well, honestly, one of my key areas that I remember so well from Australia, Toowoomba. I used to teach at the University of Illinois, and we would talk about remember the massive flooding? Oh my goodness, how many years ago was that now? I'll have to go look that up, but it's right in here. Just looking at this, the flooding in the interior just reminds me of such a chaotic event. And so we take a look at what these winds are expected to be. And while we've got a dominant area of high pressure to the south, and this high pressure cell is going to be critical as it slides over toward the east, pulling Alfred down like this on its backside, we will be expecting to get some pretty strong wind gusts right along the coast. Now, I don't think that the models are getting the winds just right. I'm going to show you those in just a few moments. But because when I look at what we've got here from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, I'm not seeing a large area of wind gusts that are expected to be 70, 80, 100 knots. They are expected to be strong, and there's a pretty large envelope of stronger winds here. But I'm not overly seeing this being a powerful wind event, maybe compared to what some folks are talking about. But we need to get in there and see what it looks like in the models. So watch the positioning of this high pressure cell and then Alfred here, okay? So as we go forward, that high pressure cell slides south as we get into the late night kind of hours on Thursday into the early morning on Friday as the system makes its landfall. The high pressure cell slides over Tasmania and then just gets right here off of the coast. So the flow is coming around like this, pulling Alfred's moisture very close to the shore and just straight south here. Okay, so where are we in time? This is Friday evening, getting into Saturday midday. This is Saturday afternoon and evening. We're just kind of working our way through Sunday into Monday. Can you see that? Now, again, all of these animations, you've got them. You can go look at them at any time you want. I'll show you where to access those in a few moments. But I just want to show you this again. From landfall, which again will be late on Thursday, getting through Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, the heaviest rains are kind of following the coastal regions, and there could be a substantial amount of rainfall. I think there's going to be several places that pick up well in excess of 200 millimeters of rainfall. Other than that, the map is showing us here some tropical convection along the north. We're going to see that throughout the weekend into early next week. As we just play this forward, we don't see any other major organized systems coming through. I do have chances of storms midweek next week down here in Western Australia. As we go forward into Thursday and Friday of next week, there are just a few isolated events at some bigger thunderstorms that we see in Western Australia. But honestly, that's about it through our next 8 or 9 days. So a lot of the focus is going to be on Alfred. Now, just to kind of give you a glimpse here at the maximum estimated wind gusts over the next 10 days, we can kind of see how windy it, of course, is across the ocean to the south. But if we kind of just take a quicker look here, we could get these wind gusts. I'm measuring this in miles per hour, just to be clear. We could get these wind gusts just offshore of 60 to maybe 70 miles an hour. But once we get a little farther inland, we're looking at 40 to maybe 50 mile an hour gusts, okay? Outside of that, not too windy most other places, just a few pockets over the next 10 days that could see some stronger winds. So let's go ahead and see how much total precipitation we are talking about here. I'm going to use the European model only because it has the highest skill score at this point. So if we just play this through Sunday into Monday and Tuesday, the numbers that are overlaid are in millimeters, and there are several places in through here that go off my color bar. So if you get into that bright white, we're now looking at better than 275 millimeters being projected. And I've seen a few really quite outstanding model forecasts that are predicting over 400 millimeters in places. So the flash flood threat is very high in this area going forward. Now, this is just through Monday, and we still see the storms across the north, very dry in the interior, dry in parts of Western Australia as well. As we just play this on, you'll be later, midweek to the end of week next week, that we start to see better chances for these isolated storms to come through. South Australia, very dry for the most part. We're going to get through much of the next 10 days without much. And there's going to be a large section here of the interior that I'm not anticipating any moisture, honestly, to get into that region. Now, I want to show you something. This is the web page I keep talking about. I'll make sure it's linked in the email so you can see it too. But it's just ag-wx.com/AUS_FCST. So that's kind of Australia_forecast, just abbreviated. When you get here, you can look at all of the different models. I've got 5 of them: the European, the GFS, the artificial intelligence, and I've even got their ensemble, so you can take a look at those as well. And as you find yourself kind of digging through better map needs going forward, just tell me about it and I'll get them in there. Right now, I don't have city selecting opportunities for all of you. It's only for the US, but we can be building that in very soon when I get access to better data from BOM. Now, I want to slide you down here and just show you one other piece of this. Just below that, I have 5 maps that now show you anomalous precipitation. And you've seen a couple of things here. You've seen where the heaviest rains are and where we could get some interior storms. But I would like to click over here on the European ensemble. That's where it says, well, down here, ECMWF ensemble. Because what this will do is this will bring up just a quick animation of the next 7 days. And now you can see we're easily going to eclipse 90 plus millimeters compared to our averages. But if we just go out there to the next 10 days, quite dry in the interior. Again, we can see the chances for some storms here and chances there, and also here in the headwaters of some of our bigger rivers. But as we get out there fully into week 2, the models do try to bring in this. And this is something we're going to talk more about in a few moments, but it's the movement of the MJO back to being just north of you. That's that band of bigger convection that follows along the equator. And during that time frame, the model is trying to pick up on some wetter conditions overall. But if I just showed you the next 2 weeks on one map, this kind of makes sense where these next 10 days are quite dry in through here, right? But if you look at the day 10 through 15, there's some better thunderstorm action that seems to be showing up. Until then, all of the big action is going to be here. Temperature-wise, over the last month, very hot in the interior again, very hot in Western Australia, except for along the coast. And we're going to be seeing something similar to this as we go forward through this mid part of March. On the website, you also have access to the forecast of temperatures every 6 hours, of course, labeled in degrees Celsius. And if we just take a look at this, look at the heat here. That contour line is everywhere that's going to be above 40 C. So that is, of course, this afternoon on Thursday. This is getting into the overnight hours, Thursday into Friday. Watch the Friday heat pop back out there. Watch it again on Saturday. This is crazy. Look at that. That's Saturday afternoon's heat. And while we're watching the rain-cooled air and cloud cover keep temperatures down here, by the time we get into early next week, like Sunday, that's a broad swath of Australia seeing temperatures well in excess of 40 degrees C. And then you're going to see that again on Monday, all the way down to South Australia here. And then again on Tuesday. Yeah, please go out and play around with these animations so you can see what I'm seeing here. Very, very intense heat that's coming through the midsection of the country. That's just out a week already, and we're just getting a good sense of that heat building in. So for the next 5 days, we're looking at temperatures that could be anywhere between 5 and 10 degrees C above average. And through this quarter, while the rain cools us off here, and we're a little cooler along the coast on the west coast. That's day 5 through 10, which would be the 10th through the 15th. Very, very hot here in South Australia and surrounding regions. Temperatures at times approaching 10 to 12 degrees C above average. And then out there to day 10 through 15, we start to lose some of that signal. But remember, this was a time frame when we were kind of watching for maybe a bit more thunderstorm activity. It's still pretty far up in the air, though, for me to make a solid conclusion on that week 2. So please use the website to stay ahead of that. Okay, so what do we need to think about as we get into the sub-seasonal forecast? That would be week 2 to week 8. I'm noticing this. Now, I keep talking about this thing called the MJO. And right now it's in phase 1, but it's expected to sweep through phase 2, 3, 4. And that would be where we are coming across the Indian Ocean. So if you want to see what this looks like, I'll show it to you like this. Now, this is a terrible color bar. I'm sorry. But what this is a Hofmuller diagram. Starts today and goes all the way through the 20th of March. And what I want you to hone in on is this. You can also see another patch of those greens over here, which I'll label these browns in the middle. Now, what this is suggesting is that we're going to start to see better rising motion over time coming into Indonesia. We're going to have sinking motion over here in the Pacific, which we need to talk about, and also some more rising motion happening in this area, which is going to be critical for South American weather, which I'll tell you about in a few moments. When I keep talking about the MJO, it's just labeled like this. This is region 1, 2, 3, 4, which is north of you, 5, which is also north of you, 6, 7, and 8. Sorry, my handwriting's not too good here. But as we get this to slide in this direction, that puts bigger storms basically to the north of Australia. And you can see that when you look at just the next month, starting on the 15th of March, going to the 15th of April. The flow comes into this direction, into that direction, and there's a lot of rising motion here. So we're getting kind of this trade wind burst from the west and a trade wind burst from the east, creating a lot of rising motion in that particular spot. Now, I want you to come back to what we shared with you at the beginning of this video. As I zoom in here to Australia to show you the precipitation forecast, and again, these are anomalies measured in millimeters, it is going very aggressively wet across the north. You can see that. That's all dependent on that MJO movement. And I'm just going to tell you, put a big question mark over this, because as we saw, the forecast was way overdone for the midsummer time frame. And we're just curious if we're going to carry this going forward. What I can tell you, though, is that the model is not aggressively going over dry for large regions, which means if we can begin to fill in some of these pockets, some of these holes, I know we're going to hit this one really hard in the next, 60 hours or so. We do have some other places that really need to see some major relief from these drought conditions. Okay, with all of that, I want to show you the next piece. What's helping the MJO center itself here is the fact that our La Nina is now very much out in the middle of the Pacific, what we call kind of a center or western focused La Nina. Some folks might call it a Modoki or Modokai, just named after the Japanese scientists that studied this. But what I do see here is a fading La Nina quite rapidly. We've already seen significant warming here going over toward South America, and this has just pushed this La Nina out, and it is expected to fade relatively quickly. If you look right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean at what we call Nina region 3.4, if you remember my old videos, that's where I'm going to watch for the greatest change. And after peaking once at Christmas and a second time about a month later, we've watched it really warm up since then. So we'd like to know, are we going to make a rapid transition toward El Nino as we approach our winter months? And right now, I think the answer to that is no. If we look at the best forecast we've got as we approach, autumn going forward, I just see, autumn toward your winter. I just see in here INSO-neutral conditions. There's no strong signal that this just flips back over and goes very, very warm, which would be something we could use to understand maybe what this upcoming, autumn into winter timeframe could look like. But as it stands, I do have some information on maybe the way that the rest of this season might play out. If we look historically, I've shown you this many times, these are all of our La Nina events. And what we can do is look at a La Nina event from the past, especially those that we would consider weak and maybe some of the moderate ones, and say, well, what happened after they began to fade? And so that's what I've made you here. What you've got first is kind of an international view of things. So a couple of things to point out. This is going, again, March to May. So that'd be spring for the Northern Hemisphere. We've seen some dryness around the Black Sea. We've seen very wet conditions in Southeast Asia. We've seen dryness trying to build into our winter wheat belt in the midsection of the United States, which is where we're going to need the rain for the winter wheat crop to thrive getting into April. We've seen some dryness here across parts of eastern and southern Brazil getting into Argentina. And what we notice, though, is that's probably going to be because the most focused rising motion will continue to be where I just mentioned it. And as a result, if you zoom in on Australia, we tend to see this region getting painted toward wetter when you look at historical averages. We tended to be hotter and drier into the interior here, and this does hit on some key acres in Western Australia and South Australia. Now, that's just we're just blending together all of these years when we do this. And I've done the same thing for temperatures. And again, it tended to keep it a little cooler north and more mild south. But just see something here. These temperature anomalies are tiny. So don't look at that and go really cold. No. It's just like a half degree cooler than average. So I just want to be clear that these composites don't convey all the information that we'd like for them to do. So if we come back and use the European model, which is predicting these INSO-neutral conditions, we can see what its forecast looks like for March, April, and May. And you'll just notice kind of some similar themes. We are quite dry here now. We continue to be that way. A little wetter there, wetter along the coast. But remember, the model was initialized with the tropical cyclone sitting right there. So that's included in this forecast. We then go forward into April, May, June. We don't see strong anomalous precipitation forecasts anywhere across Australia. I'd say, what about May, June, July? Here we are approaching, we're through autumn and we're approaching, our winter time frame. Not necessarily a strong signal either way in the central part of Australia. A little wetter in parts of New South Wales along the coast and maybe into Western Australia. And then this would be June, July, August, the heart of winter. And what we'll be watching at that time frame is how does the southern annular mode affect this? Because right now, as I look at all of this is hot off the press. We just got this morning here in the States. So I'm trying to assess what this is going to be, which means my next forecast, I'll be able to include some other models to kind of make better sense of what this might be. But I want to do this. Can I go back out to the global view? Because while you will be in the middle of your winter, take note of this. Possibly an early start to the Indian monsoon, wet across the Manchurian plain, North China plain, but drier in Southeast Asia. There's a drier signal around the Black Sea. The Canadian prairie, much of the plains of the United States having a drier signal show up in the models as well. And that's very concerning for the United States, to be honest with you, and the Canadian prairie, seeing the model go this dry. If I take you back in time, if you want to see a couple things, this could be critical for the success of the safrinha crops grown in South America, of which we primarily look at corn and cotton over here in eastern Brazil. So we have to watch all of this very carefully as we press forward into this forecast. Okay, last couple things I want to talk about. I'm just going to give you a quick global update, and we're going to start first with recent precipitation here from for South America. Drought has tried to build in over in the east. Now, when you think about it, the biggest producing state for corn, soybeans, cotton, it's all Mato Grosso. But we've watched drier conditions come into Bahia. We grow a lot of cotton right in through here, also corn and soybeans. Goiás, Tocantins, Minas Gerais, very dry in the last 30 days. Before that, it was Paraguay and northern Argentina that were incredibly dry, but the drought that was in down here in Buenos Aires was knocked out over the last month with huge thunderstorms that have produced a lot of severe weather. So if that's kind of just giving you an idea on where we've been, let's try to figure out where it might be going. We continue to see drier risks in this area over the next week. It's also drier in northern Argentina while big storms continue to barrel through this part of Cordoba, big corn and soybean producing state, into Buenos Aires, also big corn and soybean producing state. If we look out there into week 2, which is here, the models are trying to fill in the middle here with a bit of rain. This would be desperately needed rain for this safrinha or second crop that's being grown here. But if I back it out, I just want to make a comment about this. If we continue to see this region showing up dry about 4 weeks from now, that would be when the newly planted safrinha corn in this area is going into pollination and grain fill. And if it stays this dry and hot, they've been several degrees above average in this area, we have ourselves kind of a story on possibly limiting the production of that safrinha crop. So instead of it looking like 130 million metric ton crop in the total, maybe we could peel that back 5 million, maybe 7 million metric ton, which could be very, very important given that about that time we'll know that U.S. planting acreage, which right now, if you're thinking about corn market, is expected to be huge. We're possibly looking at 95 million acres of corn, which is a very large number for us. So speaking of the United States, let's go have a look at something here. We just had a monstrous winter storm system rip across the midsection of the country, but I want to talk to you folks that care a lot about cotton. Because if you look back over the last, this is over our winter, your summer, one key area of our cotton belt, which is right here, this is North Texas. We grow a tremendous amount in this area. They've been extremely dry. And why I was showing you that satellite image is because what we saw here was a major dust storm that ripped across parts of Texas. This dust storm in total size was bigger than my home state of Illinois. Now, while that was occurring, there was just this big, big extratropical low. And yes, our low pressure systems spin up backwards compared to yours. But it looks like this just today. Now, the dust may be gone. We don't see it here in Texas. The winds have calmed down. But this big storm system continues to barrel off to the east. Now, as you may have seen, we need a lot of these because so much of our upper Midwest, where we do a lot of corn, soybeans, spring wheat, winter wheat, and also several of the crops the farther south you go, this whole region has been extremely dry. We have a major river that comes through here called the Missouri River. There's the northern part of the Mississippi, and it's St. Louis, which is right here. Those two rivers combined are 2 feet below the low stage set on the river. But flooding in through this area has the Mississippi down here in Memphis 35 feet deeper than it is in St. Louis. So what I'm trying to show you is that the United States winter time has left us with major pockets of drought and major pockets of flooding. We have big time snows piled up in our western mountains, but we've had a major snow deficit in the north. And what I'm spelling out for you here is that the United States is right now looking at potentially adverse weather situation going into our spring and summer. And what we're concerned about is this. We're expecting to have to mud in a crop east, too wet in these key states for growing corn and soybeans here. We get down to cotton, peanuts, and a whole bunch of citrus down farther to the south. You then come into Texas. This is the other half of our cotton belt, still showing up very dry. And if we continue to see this dryness press in, we could really move this towards some key producing states right about the time we get into summer. And if that hits our corn acres, there's going to be a major story coming out about this, because Brazil's supplies on corn right now are the tightest that they've been. I believe it's been in almost 20 years. And if they have a problem with their corn, their safrinha corn crop, because of drought coming back into this region about a month from now, all of these things are going to line up and hit about the same time. So there's a lot. And I would just tell you this, the way I feel about the markets, just having spent time at Commodity Classic the last few days, is that I feel that everything is kind of spring-loaded right now. And as you know, in the United States, there's a lot of geopolitical things going on, including a lot of discussion about tariffs. Now, I'm no expert in that, but please stay up on that with respect to the news. Okay, I think I've filled up enough of your time here. I look forward to talking again in another couple of weeks. We'll get these videos back on a regular cadence. And I just want to say thanks for welcoming me back. Have a good one. Thank you.